a few more things before we start. Just to say to you, some of this work follows on as well in parallel with the recent award scheme review that we're all familiar with. You would have seen that document published recently, and that review has, I suppose, created a lot of very good food for thought around the award scheme and the people that interact with it, and some of the challenges that the scheme has been facing in recent years. So we really want to interact with the membership and to improve lines of communication and for them to understand the opportunities that the Training and Development Unit can offer them. So really tonight, in a nutshell, is a chance to understand the shape of the future. I'd also like to acknowledge a lot of the positive changes that have taken place within Canoeing Ireland from a governance perspective in recent years. And really that stems from the hard work of the board and indeed the CEO and various officers that work at HQ. And without their input and support and I suppose oversight of our work as a committee, we wouldn't be able to present what we have here this evening. So I'd like to think what we're presenting here this evening is clear evidence that things are improving and developing. We're not saying by any means that this is the be all and end all. We've created this opportunity to interact with the members and to give them a chance to have oversight on it as well. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to a share screen now and open up some slides for you. So just bear with me there. So there we go. Just to say a big thanks to Sam, who's been doing stellar work for Canoeing Ireland in terms of making all of the branding and the appearance of the work very themed and in line. So here's our opening slide for this evening, folks. And a question that floats around and we've been asked on many times, what is it that the TDU actually does? So what we've done in our work over a series of 8 committee meetings and countless amounts of phone calls, interactions online and emails and so on, is to sort of develop this document to explain that in a very kind of pointed and succinct way. So there are 3 main pillars of activity that we're suggesting for the training unit moving forward. Front and center of all activity would be safety. And I think everybody here in the room tonight would hopefully agree that given the kind of risky aspect to our sport on occasion, that it is our duty to keep that at front and center of conversations all the time. So I'll come back to the safety pillar in more detail now in following slides. The other 2 core pillars then are instructor development. And I think it's fair to say that traditionally the Training and Development Unit has always been very closely associated with the detailed workings of our successful award scheme. What we'd like to try and do now is to put more emphasized focus on the club development issue. We're all aware that the clubs, without the clubs, there would be no Canoeing Ireland. They're just such a pivotal part of the workings of the governing body. So I'm going to go into more detail on each of those 3 pillars. But the role of the TDU cannot happen without these supporting structures, such as the administrative focus of the board, the CEO, and all the governance structures that support keeping the organisation healthy and transparent. We've also built a very strong relationship with the Training and Development Officer over the last year, and without Aidan's support and wide knowledge of the workings of the scheme, it would have been very difficult for us to get to this level of, I suppose, clarity and detail. So just to acknowledge all of the work that Aidan has done to support this, and we thank him for it. So just to give you an overview of this document structure, folks, as I said, we have our 3 pillars there, and we're going to have, with your support and giving this a mandate, we'd like to then include that on the Canoeing Ireland website so that any member who's unsure as to what the training unit is, they'll be able to follow this kind of graphic representation as well as the text-based side of things. You know, as with all workings of a governing body, the governance side of things is vitally important. So we're also going to kind of detail our responsibilities around communication, finance, and the wider governance topic. And the mutual benefits of that are very good. We've had a good year so far with the committee interacting with all sort of aspects of the wider Canoeing Ireland family. So I'm now going to focus on the safety side of things. And what I'd like you to try and understand from the start is these are three overarching statements or guides for a lot of other more detailed or pointed specific work to take place. So in recent years, a relationship has formed with the RNLI and the Irish Coast Guard and indeed inland waterways. And I suppose when we look at one of the challenges that we've all faced this year is that in that sort of explosion of activity and a lot of new people taking to the water in many different types of crafts or shapes and forms, those relationships have had to accelerate because there have been some incidents and they're well documented in the media. So this document is giving, I suppose, formal scope to go on and define those relationships in more detail and to continue working in terms of generating whether it be matter for use on social media, printed matter, but to make sure that Canoeing Ireland is considered in any of those other stakeholders outputting, whether it be safety guidance for canoeists or stand-up paddleboarders and so on. So that's the kind of first part of it. The second one would be that the TDU will liaise and consult with the management team of Canoeing Ireland to ensure that paddle sport safety is continually an agenda item and is suitably resourced in every way. And what has been very heartening to see for me personally this year is the investment in additional full-time officers in terms of events, disability and inclusion, and indeed the kind of support structures in the office. So I suppose the TDU acting in its voluntary capacity is there to perhaps scrutinise or to support or indeed to maybe mandate additional work in this area if we feel it necessary. So I suppose that could hopefully bring some comfort to an ordinary member knowing that someone is there as the voice for safety. The third then sort of overarching statement is that the continual development of safety resources for the benefit of members is a key action for the TDU committee. And this should happen in partnership with the Canoeing Ireland management team. And this content and its validity must be evaluated before publishing. So what we're trying to achieve here, folks, is a very cohesive and streamlined approach to any materials that are generated that encourage safe practice and support that. What we can't afford to have is out of sync materials. So even right down to the authenticity of the content, the branding, and the timing of it as well, depending on what might be topical, whether it's high water, white water season, if there's particular floods on at the time, or if it's in the middle of, you know, a very nice high pressure and there's a lot of sea kayaking or sit on top activity. And what I'd also like to sort of promote in that third and final point is that the full-time officers of Canoeing Ireland, if they're developing a new resource and maybe wanted a filter on that, they can bring that to the training unit for perhaps input, feedback, and so on behalf of the membership. So I hope that slide sort of describes the safety pillar to you. So I'm going to move on next now to instructor development. And as I mentioned earlier on, the training unit has traditionally always had a very, very, I suppose, detailed and engaged level of work around the award scheme. So as the organisation has grown and developed in recent years, that's changed. And I suppose when I look back at the AGM last year, again, repeating that question, what is the role of the TDU? There had been, I suppose, a period of inactivity or challenge, shall we say, around the training unit. And what we've done now over the last year is try to address those changes that have taken place for the better in the last few years, and to define how the training unit can support the ongoing work around the award scheme and indeed the growing of the instructor population. So number one, the TDU will engage with the award scheme related queries that are notified to the Training and Development Officer. The purpose of this is to ensure that fair process is ensured to such queries and that no one individual takes decisions on their own, I suppose. And what that can do is bring a level of comfort that, I'll give you an example, that during lockdown this year, some training instructors were unable to fulfill all of their requirements for very, I suppose, good reasons. They simply couldn't get out and access those activities. And so coming towards assessment, they would be able to apply to the Training and Development Officer if they wanted to maybe have a dispensation or to use other hours in that way. And so the Training and Development Officer would bring those queries to the training unit, and then at least there's a kind of a period of, I suppose, analysing of those requests, and just to ensure that it's dealt with fairly to the member and that they're given a clear process with which to finish out their query. So I suppose the key word there is oversight. Number two, the Training and Development Unit will work with the TDO, the Training and Development Officer, to periodically organise continuous professional development opportunities for its members. And this could take the form of workshops to ensure the consistency of user experience on a range of awards or safety related matters. So again, just to say on a personal note, it would have been a priority goal of myself to have CPD events this year, but COVID-19 clearly kind of hampered those ambitions. But just to acknowledge that it would have been flagged at last year's AGM that Sport Ireland will require all national governing bodies to have some process of CPD. So it is coming down the tracks as being a requirement for instructors. But what we're hoping to do in this next year is to create a series of, shall we say, less formal engagements. And I think we've all learned this year to work much better online. So some of those CPD opportunities could take the form of webinars such as this. They needn't necessarily be traveling a distance and committing a day or a weekend for a face-to-face engagement. So we really are enthused about that particular opportunity, and it just gives instructors a chance to refresh their skills and knowledge, or indeed to share their own knowledge and help others benefit from that. So I suppose in 2021 there will be development around the CPD aspect of things. Number three, the TDU will be available for consultation with paddle sport related stakeholders. So like the safety topic, if there are other relevant topics around maybe development of resources for teaching and learning or whatever the case may be, it leaves the scope there for the TDU to set up those working groups or to be part of them and use the expertise that may be within the group at the time. And then finally, the TDU will work with the TDO and other Canoeing Ireland officers to develop strategies for club development. And the purpose will be to ensure that there are sufficient levels of instructors to drive grassroots introductions and ensure there are bridging programs to drive future development. One point I'd like to emphasize around this one, and in the past, there would have always been a clear linkage between the Training and Development Officer and the TDU. Now this document that we're proposing is going to cast that net wider so that, for example, the events officer could work closely with the TDU in partnership. Maybe they're organizing a CPD event or perhaps a safety promotion event. Equally so, the same could happen with the Disability and Inclusion Officer. I'm aware there's a lot of initiatives going on in kind of preparation for next season. So what it's doing is leaving the scope open there for kind of project-based work, depending on what might be topical at the time. My apologies, I just clicked through there to the next slide. a little too quickly. I'll just take a quick sip of water. So I suppose, as I mentioned to you earlier on, one of the kind of newer focuses to reflect the changes in recent years is for the TDU to have more input and ability to work in the area of club development. Again, this is a big focus for Canoeing Ireland and its full-time officers. So number one, the TDU committee will work with the TDO on any club development support queries relating to where new club development intersects with the award scheme. This could take the form of award scheme opportunities and initiatives that might support the spawning or further growth of Canoeing Ireland canoe clubs nationwide. So again, a lot of scope there for project-based work. Let's say, for argument's sake, you know, if we had a new club in any of the regions, that perhaps Canoeing Ireland could, using the support of the TDU, send down a number of instructors for a weekend to kind of, you know, show them the way, explain about how the award scheme works, maybe carry out some training. So we believe that to be, hopefully when we get to a post-COVID environment, a very powerful tool for further club development. Number two, in order to support the whole process of continuous improvement of the award scheme and the support of clubs and providers, CPDs should be run where necessary. So that's kind of linked to the previous slide, but allowing it to happen perhaps on a club by club basis, should the need arise. Number three, clubs should be encouraged to reach out to the TDU if they have specific training needs. And the TDU can explore opportunities to facilitate the hosting of workshops or courses to meet those needs. And these should be done via the TDO and the Canoeing Ireland administration. So again, to emphasize to members, and we really would appreciate you attending here this evening, that if you are speaking to other instructors, to really encourage them to follow the proper channels of communication through the Canoeing Ireland office and its officers, and they will filter those queries, if necessary, to the Training and Development Unit. Just to give you one example, some of you may have noted that when there was a period of eased restrictions there early in September, we did actually provide a bit of training and workshop to a club in the Midwest region that would have very much fitted into this, this guideline that we have here. And it was a really successful weekend. The feedback was very positive. So hopefully we can kind of get back to more of that when restrictions ease in 2021. Anyway, moving on, number four, the Training and Development Unit will work with the events officer in Canoeing Ireland to create a virtuous programme of events associated with the award scheme that balance regional and discipline diversity with the programme tied into an event calendar. So what's that saying to us is that we will be strategic in supporting the events officer, and that we will work when we're planning a season ahead to try and get dates for CPD events or workshops out well in advance so that they can be properly communicated to members, but also resourced in the correct way in terms of maybe its venues or online activity and so on. So to create a stronger working relationship with the events officer. Number five, the Training and Development Unit will work with the Canoeing Ireland Club Officer to create an open communication network that allows clubs to communicate between themselves with the guidance from Canoeing Ireland and the TDU where required. So really just sort of emphasising that point that hopefully in time to come, that the clubs will see the training unit as a resource to support them in whatever is topical or whatever needs they may have at the time. And finally, number six, the Training and Development Unit will work with Canoeing Ireland to create and update a library of resources to be published on the Canoeing Ireland website in specific relation to formation, progression and continual development of clubs. And I think hopefully everybody here tonight will acknowledge that the website has come an awful long way, particularly in the last 12 months. I think Canoeing Ireland are very self-aware that the website is by no means complete. And certainly I am aware that there is more work to be done, particularly around the area of the database and so on. But I suppose research around that is well underway, and hopefully you will be able to see the benefits of those improvements as time goes by. So they're your three pillars: safety, instructor development, and indeed club development. So I'd like to focus on two more areas now, the administration side and that of the training and development officer. So these are the supporting structures that we saw on the kind of infographic at the start. So the TDU committee will support the administration of Canoeing Ireland on matters of strategic development and in the implementation of relevant initiatives and work. So we will all be aware that there's a new strategic development plan has been worked on by the board. A lot of very detailed work gone into that over the last year. And that's almost ready for publication now, I believe. And we have been consulted on that, and it's great to see that the board has the, I suppose, the vision and the awareness to consult all of the relevant stakeholders, not just the TDU. And so on a case-by-case basis or project-based work, we will be there to support any of the initiatives that will be stated in the new strategic development plan. Number two, I suppose this is one of the areas that has been of great support to us in the last year, is that we have a CEO that will work with the chair and the treasurer of the TDU to ensure the necessary financial provisions are made on an annual basis for the committee to carry out its affairs. So some of us here tonight will recall a different financial structure in the past where I suppose training unit memberships would have come directly into the TDU. There would have been a treasurer and a whole set of governance and oversight there to manage those finances. Because the organisation has grown so much, it's now, I suppose, it's better that everything is managed through the office, and on an annual basis, whether it's myself or any future chairperson, and indeed it's the officers of that committee, will work in partnership with the CEO to define a budget for the following year to ensure that everything can be provided for, whether it's online costs for softwares or meeting hosts, if there's travel costs in the future, or indeed to make provision for development of safety resources or CPDs, that there would be financial provision for those activities. And then number three, that the CEO, board and management team will work to support the TDU committee to ensure that the highest standards of corporate governance and compliance are adhered to. And as many of you, I'm sure here tonight, you've probably been on various different committees over the years. For me personally, this is probably one of the most important points of all of this work, because as volunteers giving our time on this work, we want to ensure that we always have oversight and governance, that nobody is exposed or flies solo, so that we can enjoy the benefits of having a well-governed organisation that's fully transparent for all members to have trust and belief in their work. So that's the administration side of things. And then the final one is the training and development officer. So, you know, over the years, we've had many fantastic people working in the organisation. And over the last year, the current committee have built a fantastic working relationship with the current TDO, Aidan Doran. It's been an enjoyable process, and I suppose he has his finger on the pulse for the day-to-day activities of all the communications that would be coming through the office, and indeed in terms of the operational meetings that he would have with the other Canoeing Ireland employees. So it's a great kind of, I suppose, resource and support for us to have as a committee. So number one, Canoeing Ireland Training and Development Officer will have an automatic and non-voting seat on the TDU. So for example, in future, at some point I'll have to step down as chairperson, and the next person will take that role. But whoever the TDO is, they will always have a seat on that committee. And again, that is allowing us to have a direct connection with the governing body, to seek advice where necessary. And again, for us all to have oversight on any decisions that might need to be made. And number two, the training and development unit will support the work of the TDO to ensure the benchmarking of the award scheme continues to operate at a high standard. Updates, review work, improvements, and supporting positive change is all part of this brief. So I suppose just as a slight aside to that, you will have noted that there are a series of motions that have been proposed for the upcoming AGM, and they specifically relate to the findings of the recent award scheme review. And we're very hopeful that those changes address a lot of the feedback and queries that came out of that work. And it's a very good example of how the working relationship between the TDO and the committee can yield opportunities for the members to create change. We're working on the members' behalf. We're working for you. So the TDU and the TDO working together will seek continual feedback from the membership in order to support the award scheme's development. I'd like to take a moment to address that topic. I will speak about it more at the upcoming AGM, but one job that we are determined to do better on next year is to make more use of social media channels and kind of incidental communications with the membership. Just by way of explanation, we've been very, very embedded in this particular task this year. It's been something that's taken quite a lot of work. So I suppose next year our focus will shift more towards the communication side of things and really doing more on that front. So thank you for that. Number 4, the TDO will oversee the implementation of approved changes to the scheme. So for example, after the next AGM, if some or all of those motions receive approval, it will then be back to the TDO to ensure that those changes are reflected, for example, in any documentation associated with those awards, or indeed communicating those changes to instructors so that they know they have the benefit of those in their work in the future. Finally then, the committee should serve as a filter and support for proposed changes brought by the TDO. So that's one of the things that has been quite successful behind the scenes this year, that there have been numerous occasions when the TDO has brought various queries to the committee. We use this platform called Basecamp, where we carry out a lot of our work. And I think one benefit for the future is that when committee positions change, or you know, whenever I move on, that there will be a very defined space where all of the documents related to the training unit's work, the archives effectively, will be available to pass on to future committees. So yes, that's the work that we are proposing to take place around our supporting structures and relationship with the Training and Development Officer. So just to go through a few more points, folks, there's an email address there now. You know, I'm hoping that over the next few days that, you know, maybe as you go about your canoeing work or your thoughts, that maybe there might be some reflections or feedback or suggestions that you'd like to bring to us from tonight. So please do take that email address, or you can use tduchair@canoe.ie and send those to us. We have time between now and the AGM for the committee to engage with you on those. And please make sure that you channel your communications through the Canoeing Ireland office through the relevant formal channels. So just to say that we are very excited as a committee about this work. Yes, it's been a very challenging year with the COVID-19 situation thrown into the mix. But if we can get to this upcoming AGM, we have this work, the role of the TDU, proposed as a motion. We will be asking you, the members, to vote and to support us in this. And then it means then that when we start in 2021, we can go on delivering and actioning what we've proposed to you here this evening. I'd like to emphasize as well that at all stages, any of the proposals here this evening have been filtered and scrutinised by the board, for starters, the board of Canoeing Ireland, our Chief Executive Officer, and also the TDO. So there's a lot of, I suppose, filtering, transparency, scrutinising of this work, and we look forward to engaging with the members now and seeking your support on this. I just, before I kind of look at the Q&A section, I also want to just say a special thanks to Sam for helping with the graphic design side of things here, for Sheena for organising all of the recent communications and making sure the online side of things is on point. So we really appreciate that support, and indeed to the board and Moira for the support on this work. So I'm going to stop my screen share now at this point, and just maybe to draw on Lorcan and Sheena, who are moderating for us here this evening, just to have a look at the Q&A side of things. So I'm just going to go to, I think it's Olin Kitteringham, regarding point 4. What is the plan to ensure there are sufficient instructor numbers in order to facilitate the rather large rate of growth in clubs and youth paddlers? That's a really good point, Olin. I suppose an initial response to that would be, if you look at the recent award scheme review and the motions that have been proposed for the upcoming AGM, I'm aware that I suppose many of those opportunities present some streamlining. For example, in around the level 2 instructor award, there are some pathways that allow a more streamlined path to assessment. So we are continually open to feedback from trainee and qualified instructors if there's a way of doing things better. But we have a number of committee members on the TDU that very much come from a club background. We've got a very diverse committee, and they have been loud in their voice for clubs, and we hope that we can continue to support club development that way. So I hope that answers your question, Olin. Let's take a break for a moment there, or take a breath. Thanks again to Paul Kerr for joining us this evening from Wildwater. So for over 10 years, our club has run an annual weekend along safety CPD for our river trip leaders, using senior instructors from active commercial operators. Will there be any Canoeing Ireland funding for instructor costs, accommodation costs for club-based CPDs? Will there be a syllabus and/or certification for such club-based CPDs? And do you see any particular challenges for building safety in clubs with a high turnover of instructors, leaders, for example, college clubs? So thank you for that contribution, Paul. There's a number of questions in that, and hopefully I can kind of separate them and address them for you. So my own personal experience with Canoeing Ireland, and I speak outside TDU work here, is if any instructor within the Canoeing Ireland network, or club for that matter, comes up with an initiative that supports instructor development or safety, I think there is an openness to project-based work there. And I hope our CEO, if she learns of this particular statement, won't kill me for saying, but pitch your idea is what I'm saying. You know, certainly you have a track record and proven evidence there in your own club, Paul, of many years of carrying out that work. I think if you can kind of demonstrate that work provides, you know, very valid benefits to the membership, that there could be a case for support there. But what we want to ensure, Paul, and must emphasize this, that is done fairly to the entire club network as well. Again, if you had a specific requirement for technical support, either from a commercial provider or indeed from the network of volunteers on the training and development unit, please do pitch to us. And then just to your last point there, do you see any particular challenges for building safety in clubs with a high turnover? What is being done this evening, Paul, is that the session is being recorded. The training and development officer is with us here this evening, so I will raise that one with him. Certainly under the safety pillar of what I've outlined to you here this evening on behalf of the committee, is that the college clubs in particular is something that's very, I suppose, high priority for us there. And we did have one interaction of a training nature with one of the university clubs this year, which was highly successful. But as soon as we get out of a restricted environment, we do want to engage more with them and provide resources to them. So Paul, thank you for that. I hope it addresses your questions there. John Healy is here with us as well with a query. The presentation focuses on instructors. The invite was for instructors and coaches. What, if any, is the relationship of the TDU with coaches and coach qualifications? John, that's an excellent question, and thank you for bringing it up. I think you have a point there. We may need to go back and just to ensure that the language equally balances the description either of instructor and coaches. And so I will take that point and go back and address that. But you will note in recent communications around the AGM that at every stage we have acknowledged either trainee or qualified instructors and coaches. There have been interactions with the high performance officer this year around coaching qualifications, and I know that that he has carried out a lot of work around some development in those coach qualifications. I suppose what I would like to see, John, and perhaps feel free to contact me after tonight on this particular topic, is the current Training and Development Unit Committee does not have an officer from a competitive coaching background, and that's something that we're very open to. There is a function to allow us to co-opt a person of that description post AGM. So if you'd like to reach out and contact me in the coming days, I look forward to working with you on that topic. But thank you for that point. I will address the need for balance on that description of coaches. So thank you. So a message here in the Q&A from Brian Ogilvie. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, appreciate your comments there. Could you mention the vacancies on the TDU committee that are up for election at the AGM? Yeah, that's a very good point. So look, folks, we put a call out there. There are some vacancies on the committee. I suppose last year we were all very encouraged to see a very healthy number of people taking up committee positions, and you know, just through very natural reasons for any committee, and maybe promoted more by COVID-19 this year, some of our committee members will be stepping down because their work or family circumstances have changed due to COVID-19, and they're no longer in a position to kind of give the time commitment required around it. So the C officer position is available, and of particular note there is work to be done in 2021 around forming a subgroup that will work on the Sea Kayak Awards. But I hasten to add, and I was very correctly reminded by Tom Romain yesterday, that the sea officer isn't particularly restricted to sea kayaking on its own. It could be anything around sit-on tops or stand-up paddleboarding as well. I'd also like to emphasize, Brian, and to other members here this evening, that we do see changes possible in the future around the titling of people on the committee. For example, now that I suppose the treasury side of things is being managed more so from HQ, and the full-time officers, the need for a full-time treasurer might not be the same in the future, but that conversation I think is for another day. To get back to the question in hand, we are also looking for a safety officer. We have had some interest in developing the disability and inclusion side of things, so there may be some doubling up of work there. But just to sort of say to folks this evening, if you like what you see here this evening and you fancy rolling up your sleeves in 2021, there is an opportunity post AGM for people to be co-opted onto the committee. So I look forward to hearing from you on that, and I hope that answers the point that you've raised there, Brian. Hello to Michael Carroll, nice to hear from you. So when will the Sea Rescue Course program be organised? So I'm just going to take that topic on its own there, Michael, before I go to the second one. So I just mentioned in the previous point there that will be one of the focal points for 2021. There is a number of people being mentioned to come together on a subgroup that reflects, I suppose, the range of diversity in Irish sea kayaking. There have been informal communications with the Irish Sea Kayaking Association about coming closer together to kind of work on a more focused basis around perhaps more training and awards for those members. So just to emphasize to you, Mick, that is not far away, that is around the corner. I suppose what we're trying to do is to address the question of last year's AGM around what is the role of the TDU, get that agreed by the members, and to give the committee a mandate with which to go off and develop topics such as you suggested in 2021. Your second point there, Michael, can we have a fuller explanation of the reasons why the proposed changes to the award scheme are being proposed? It would make it easier to decide and to support them. Okay, that is a very good point, Michael. I don't have the time or the facility this evening to go through all of those motions with you, but just to say, I could ask you, or indeed anyone else here this evening, if there's one in particular that you would have received in your email in recent days, if there's one that you would like specific clarification on, please do email the Training and Development Officer. You can get him at tdo@canoe.ie. If you'd like to, you can CC me on that as well, or they'll bring it to me, and we'll provide you with more reasoning and rationale around that. But just in broad terms, Michael, to say to you that any of the motions that have been proposed at the upcoming AGM, they are products of the feedback that came out of the award scheme review. And on the night of the AGM, as those motions are brought to the floor, there will be a rationale and an explanation given at that stage. But please do contact us in the meantime if you'd like to get ahead of the meeting on that one. So thank you, Michael, for your engagement there. Thank you there as well for just clarifying the email address, Michael. It's development@canoe.ie. You can appreciate I have a lot on my mind here this evening, so do correct me on any of those housekeeping things if I need to. So a message here from Go Paddle, lots of great work down there in the southeast. Hi all, a question around the removal of the standalone RSR1 training with the elements of the RSR then to be integrated into the Skills Award. So again, I suppose a little bit like Michael's previous one, that's perhaps a question that's best directed to the TDO, and the email address is below there for you. And with the removal of the requirement to log 2 RSR1s at level 2 instructor level, is there an alternative option being proposed for this? So what I will say around those, just in sort of broad stroke terms, is based on feedback from members, I suppose a process of streamlining some of the awards was sought, and that was the rationale behind raising those. But I would encourage you to contact the TDO directly on that particular one. So I hope that answers your query. So thank you for that. Let me see, anything else there now? Just to give some extra info we have provided. Okay, so yeah, just there's also a point worth noting there. I didn't want to speak out of turn earlier on this particular one, but I've been reminded of it by a colleague. So just to notify all of you that Canoeing Ireland has specifically applied for funding to Sport Ireland for a very focused and targeted safety campaign for 2021. We have been floating some ideas around things like e-safety courses and whether it's printed assets or material to have around the place. And I think it's fair to say there has been a lot of very targeted posting generated by the office and SAM around those topics, but to take it to a much higher level in 2021 and with the use of video support. So I hope that addresses that point. So I just catch my breath there for a moment, folks. I suppose just to sort of, as we come to close this evening, just to say I really am enthused by the high levels of turnout here this evening and the breadth of experience from the members, and we really do look forward to continued engagement with you. You know, in no shape or form do we as a committee promise to be all things to everybody, but certainly on a voluntary basis, this committee has worked hard and tried their best to hit the target with this. So I'd just like to thank you for your engagement this evening. And I do look forward to any emails that you might send via development@canoe.ie in the coming days. And can I finally encourage you, please, the AGM is coming up on Monday the 7th. Canoeing Ireland has already held a number of successful online AGMs this year, and we look forward to you encouraging other instructors and coaches and members to join us on that night and be part of the voice for continual improvement. So with that, folks, I'm just going to check in with Sheena and Lorcan before I sign off and say thank you. I think we've answered all questions raised there, Sheena, is that right?
Yeah, you answered all those questions. I suppose just to reiterate what you said there, that the sign-up link for the AGM for the TDU is still open and it's on Eventbrite as well. So where you signed up for this meeting, if you sign up there, and you'll be sent a link. So yeah, and thanks, John, for doing this meeting. I know there was a high interest rate in it, so it's great to have so many people on board and to get chatting to everybody. So thanks very much for facilitating it.
Great. And just to say a final thank you, everybody. Please spread the word of what you've heard this evening, and do email us if you have any further queries. And on a lighter note, then, I hope that the government will announce some more freedom for paddling opportunities at the end of this week. And stay safe out there and enjoy your return to the water activity. So thanks a lot, folks. Good night, and I look forward to hearing from you.